All right, guys. Very quickly, we're gonna make a video. Not sure how this would last, but since we're in contemporary times, we do not meme. We probably do a little jab, do a little bab, but on a serious note, we're gonna really dig into it, and we're gonna really find out why Afghanistan fell as fast as it did. I was hoping that the Afghan National Army could hold out for probably another month or so, but apparently I was wrong and I have gotten memed and ratioed into oblivion. But I do not care because one day the Afghans will take back their capital. But for right now, the Afghans, well, Kabul has fallen. So we're really going to look into why it fell so fast, how it could have been prevented, and probably how we could have never gotten this mess in the first place. Well, not me, but you, or US, or NATO. Anyway, who is to blame as well? But anyway, the Islamist militant group successfully captured the town's capital of Kabul, marking the final stages of the Taliban's full takeover of the country. So the Taliban has accelerated its operations to gain control over all of Afghanistan since last year's deal between the insurgents and the US under President Donald Trump, who agreed to completely withdraw the US forces by September 11th. As of August the 31st, or the 31st of August deadline of US troops drew near, the Taliban began to actually rapidly seize last week's outposts and towns, cities, and everything else leading up to Kabul. So first off the bat, we have to realize that it was pretty much broadcasted that we're gonna leave, so who's gonna stop them, right? It is basically, alright, we're gonna pull out, be nice, play fair, and Afghanistan, hopefully, we wish you the best. Bye-bye. So that's basically the biggest first mistake I've seen so far. Most telling of the developments on the ground were perhaps the departure of the President Afar Ghani, who actually exited from the country on Sunday, which was confirmed by Abdullah, Afghanistan's top negotiating official. Without mincing words, the former Afghan president has left the nation. Abdullah, the head of the High Council of National Reconciliation, said in a video announcement on Facebook, he has left the nation in this state. For that, God will hold him to account. Now, obviously, announcing that your president or commander-in-chief has gone as well, probably another huge mistake, and the demoralization of the already pretty much fractured national Afghan army is obviously to be expected. For instance, there's a couple of things wrong here, and I'm going to dispel some myths that are spreading on the internet. Firstly, the NAN, most of the people are in for a paycheck. They're not really into defend Afghanistan. Afghanistan, unlike the US, for example, or even any other nation state, is actually not a nation state, but a state created by the British and Russians in their great game in Central Asia. So we learn history in contemporary times. But the main problem with this is that Afghanistan, well, they're full of Tajiks, Uzbeks, Pashtuns, the majority, but still rivaled by Tajiks and Uzbeks to be like very much close. Basically, like America has 13% of a Black American population, so the white majority still is the majority of the country. But in Afghanistan, the Tajiks are a minority majority as well. They make up about 30% of northeast Afghanistan. Uzbekistan, same thing in the northwest. So they're very huge majorities because, first of all, there is a border there. There hasn't really been a border for centuries, so people are obviously going to be arbitrarily lumped into Afghanistan already. There's also ethnic, religious, and cultural practices that may force people to stay in Afghanistan. During the Soviet times, I don't think a Muslim would actually travel to the atheist Soviet Union, so there's that as well. And there's obviously the Chinese and Orientalist religions in the northeast of the country, the little panhandle that actually separates, well, what was British India and Russian Central Asia. So there's like a little sliver of China right there on the border. And of course, you cannot talk about Afghanistan without talking about Pakistan. And we'll talk about their role in doing the Taliban probably in the next video, because that video is going to be deliciously bad. But really and truly, like many Arab armies, there's a lack of centralization. People, somebody from Kandahar or the Qom or even Panjshir will not care about the capital of Kabul. They care about their provincial capital, maybe, or even their village, worst case scenario. So they might not even care about their provincial capital. They'll care about their village, and not even the villages, but their village. So there's that. There's also a low sense of morale as people are getting killed and assassinated. A lot of pilots of the Afghan Air Force have been assassinated in recent weeks. So there's obviously a drive for people to not fly, meaning that air support is pretty much gone. Can't confirm about tankers, but considering the lack of tank support, I would suggest they are actually going for the tankers as well, because the Taliban has been seen with some T-85s and some Patton tanks from the Soviet and the American sale before the Soviet won, and then again with the Civil War and before 2001. But there's also that. So really, T-85s, Patton tanks from 65 will not really be going up against the M1 Abrams. So there's that. So best thing is to take out the M1 Abrams crew as well. And most of the Abrams crews are, I believe, American as well. So there's not really going to be a lot of Abrams tanks in general. So there's that. And of course, the biggest elephant in the room. Decentralization of Afghanistan has not been carried out with efficiency or even carried out at all. So there's really no incentive to keep Kabul falling from the Taliban. I know it kind of went off on a tangent, but in later announcements, Ghani has said he has left the country to avoid bloodshed as Taliban forces enter the presidential palace. By midday, the Taliban official announcement of the group's plans to rename the state from the Afghan Republic to the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan as done in 1994 and 5. So, according to the Washington Post, the Taliban's lightning insurgency over the last month saw the capture of major governmental cities like Kunduz, which was actually the first key city to fall to the insurgents following the days of negotiation, led by tribal leaders, resulting in its surrender, reported the Post. So there's also the bigger elephant in the room, the American occupation of Afghanistan, which has been going on for 20 years. So even if these people were initially against the Taliban, which I do fear that Afghanistan will fall into civil war in the coming months, it'll be stable for now. People, as long as people get to eat and the economy is kind of okay, as long as people get to eat and stuff like in Iran, it might not boil over. But unlike Iran, the centralization of Iran is complete to the point where you are Iranian before you're Kurdish or Syrian or Turkmen. So the centralization of Iran is a bit better, so they have a bit more stability. But the problem with Afghanistan, like we said before, Tajik, Uzbek, Pashtun, they're not going to care about the capital of Kabul. And more than likely, they will probably still do their own thing, and that will come into conflict with the Taliban and civil war. But I digress. For right now on the ground, they're pretty much agreeing, and I still don't want to downplay the US involvement, but yes, they're really siding with the Taliban to own the Americans and probably stop the bombing and stuff as well. So there's that. The key details with the Taliban typically involve surrendering control of the city in exchange for a safe passage home or even payoffs to get out of their non-capital. So there's that. By early Sunday morning, the Taliban forces have reached the government-controlled city of Jalalabad, which the officials said surrendered without even a single shot fired. Soon, the remaining cities surrounding Kabul quickly fell to the insurgents' hands. Taliban forces reached the capital gates within hours of the surrender of Jalalabad. Oh boy. So, it is pretty much what it says on the tin. Pretty much steamrolled. They locked off all of the borders for Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and they have control of the Pakistani border as well. So the only way out of the country is by the Kabul airport. So not only have they been kind of strategic for an insurgency, but they've been ruthlessly effective for an insurgency as well. While analysts did not expect the Taliban insurgency to succeed this soon, the group's strategy to take control of the capital through peaceful negotiations instead of a violent offensive proved to be more effective quicker, right? So an exodus of residents and foreign diplomats began as the Taliban entered the negotiations with the Afghan officials. So neighboring countries and allies have stepped in to help the civilians evacuate the country. The United Arab Emirates Foreign Ministry said that it would facilitate the evacuation of foreign diplomats and staff through the country's airports, while Germany said that it would send military planes to evacuate German nationals and Afghan support staff. U.S. Embassy employees and citizens scrambled to evacuate before the Afghan capital was taken as well. Yes, the infamous fall of Saigon comparisons. That would be probably another video as well. So how did the government collapse so quickly? The collapse of the Afghan government was predicted quickly over the course of the last week. It was not predicted that it would fall in the course of that week. It was probably like a couple of months at best. It was primarily born out of the uncertainty created by talks in Doha, Qatar, more than a year and a half ago under President Trump. The agreement was finalized in February 2020, his last term, between the West and the Taliban, confirming a full American withdrawal along the reduced Allied forces and along with reduced Allied forces in the region, for America was pretty much holding the Allied forces together as well. And that's kind of another thing. America was pretty much lone wolfing it with a couple of bunny rabbits pretty much. If the Americans were to leave, everybody else would leave. There was no contest over that. The Taliban were just biding their time. Now, U.S. officials and Afghan military officials described the demoralized military following the Doha agreement, seeing the deal as the government guaranteed defeat against the Taliban. There was no support, there was no special forces. It was pretty much up to the NAA and the ANA to actually defend their country, and that was already a big demoralizer. That was pretty much the biggest demoralizer, as they knew they were kind of like South Vietnam. It was only a matter of time before the Taliban retook the country, and with the incompetent and corrupt Afghan government at the time, the Taliban didn't even have to shoot. So they saw the documents at the end of They saw the documents as the end and the writing on the wall. An Afghan Special Forces officer told the Post, referring to the government alignment announcements, that the day the deal was signed, we saw the change. Everyone was just looking out for himself. It was like the US left us all to fail. Conditions within the Afghanistan military quickly deteriorated thereafter, exacerbated by the combination of corruption. Many Afghan officials and officers claimed they had not received salaries in even months, and the attempt for survival against the Taliban were all motivating factors for them to not be motivated and surrender. And an attempt for, as U.S. military presence began to shrink in Afghanistan in early and late June this year, President Joe Biden reiterated the U.S. commitment to fulfilling the Doha Agreement, guaranteeing the complete withdrawal of the troops by the 31st of August. So many Afghans have to the end of the month to pretty much get out of Mr. Joe Biden will quote, "We did not go to Afghanistan to nation build," Biden said. "It was the right and responsible It's the right and the responsibility of the Afghan people alone to decide their future and how they want to run their country. Oh, come on, man. Political observers have criticized the move pretty much immediately, arguing that some of the abrupt exits from Afghanistan could leave the country vulnerable to be overtaken by the Taliban, which has pretty much gone now. Still, the deadline of withdrawal still looms, but after August the 31st, they just cement power pretty much. And on the 11th of September, to just rub salt in the wound, they'll probably create the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan officially. As anxieties over the U.S. exit grows, the Taliban began sending small groups of fighters into the government-controlled rural outposts. So, as anxieties over the U.S. exit continues to grow, the Taliban begins to send small groups of fighters and, negotiators to government-controlled rural outposts in the middle of their control areas or contested areas, striking deals with low-level representatives of the Afghan government through bribes or even safety guarantees that we will not shoot you. I believe we will not shoot you. Although Afghan officials say that the country's elite military units remain committed to safeguarding the government holdouts, without support from the local leaders, and their stocks being sold off in droves, and the military personnel on the ground not even trying and probably getting on the same planes as well, their efforts to defend the country are ultimately going to fail. What is best seen as pretty much the now in control Taliban manages the transition and handles political rivals of those who they're viewed as enemies, as summary executions and political executions, and the executions of top women officials have begun. So that's pretty much it. Afghanistan has fallen due to the corrupt Afghan government, the US withdrawal, not really so much the peace deal, but the hasty withdrawal in which they did. And there was no commitment to help the Afghan people, not even leaving a couple of pilots behind. There was also the ineptitude of the Afghan, the tribal alliances and the tribal dissatisfaction within Afghanistan. There was also, let me see what else we have here. There was also the neglect of the army, the NAN being only in it for a paycheck or trying to escape Afghanistan, fleeing for their lives before they get assassinated. And there's other such stuff as well to facilitate the fall of Afghanistan. But the US withdrawal, the NAN's inability to fight and don't want to fight because they might be targeted, the corruption, the fact that the Taliban are actually using negotiation instead of fighting, which is actually an interesting strategy that has worked so far. And, well, the hasty retreat of the Americans and them being seen as pretty much Vietnam War all over again, which strikes images into a lot of people. So like I said, hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something. I might make one about how Saigon and Kabul are not really similar, but they're similar in the fact that, well, they're withdrawn, internationally condemned, but unlike that, I don't think America might bounce back from 20 years. The war in Vietnam lasted it's not 10 years on the dot, but by 1975, all the American officials were getting out, so yeah, let's call it 1975. So 10 years, actually it cut off at 8 years, 1965 to 1973, and then the last 2 years in Saigon before it fell in 1975. The transitional government, which formally unified North and South Vietnam into one. The key differences is that the Taliban, unlike the Viet Cong or even the National Vietnamese Army of the North, had a political ideology, one that was kind of communist but more nationalist, as they wanted the unification and the full independence of Vietnam. The Taliban's goals are not certain, nor are they coherent, and that's why I say it might lead to some civil war, as there's two things I said as well. If you're in Afghanistan, expect holding it easy. Well, expect getting in easy, but holding it to be hard. And when you leave, there's going to be a civil war. You can look throughout all of history, from the British with their removal and a civil war, or more attacking the British and the government troops trying to stop them. The Soviet invasion, which left the power vacuum, that created the Taliban, coincidentally. And yes, we'll talk about Pakistan and how they're now trying to reconcile with the monster that they made, now that it's on their border again. And while I did say that the Viet Cong had a more reasonable and straightforward political ideology, in 20 years I do believe they're gonna get a bit more solid, the Taliban. So I'm gonna expect some cross-border raids. The most tense relations between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So there's gonna be that. Uzbekistan and Tajikistan have allowed Russia, well, not allowed, but have started some war games with Russia in preparation for any escalation in violence. The region is pretty much on standstill, waiting to see what happens. The big elephant or dragon in the room, that could probably have an effect on the Taliban-led government as well, as Afghanistan is next to a certain province that I shall not name, but is home to a blue flag with a heart, with a crescent moon and a star in it. And well, since they are waging jihad, I would assume that jihad will go into not only Pakistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, but also China. Yep, there you go. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed. 30 minutes. I'm gonna let this slide. I'll probably listen to it again and see how great I did. But besides that, I think that's pretty much it. Did I talk a bit fast? Probably yes. Did I stutter a bit? Yes. But all in all, pretty good video. I'm not even freaking tired of talking yet. Just have nothing to talk about. Coconut intro. Ooh. But anyway, I leave you with that. We're gonna make a proper video tomorrow. But yeah, the fall of Kabul, really heartbreaking stuff for Afghanistan. And I'll see you next time. We just go straight into it. No funny Allahu Akbar. Alright, maybe one Allahu Akbar. But anyway, hope you all enjoyed. Pray for Afghanistan, like I said. And Allahu Akbar. Not something, of course.